Gonna mute myself.
Hello, I'm going to give everyone just a few more minutes to get logged in, but a few housekeeping things to cover. Welcome to part 2 of our presentation, and your cameras are shut off and the microphones are muted. Please use the Q&A feature to ask questions to the presenters today. And following today's webinar, you will receive the link to the recording, and we will get the PDF out to you as soon as it is available. You can also find recordings of our past presentations on the website, and that will also be included in your follow-up email. So I will turn it over to Laura Demuse from MDHHS.
Well, thank you, Heather. And welcome back for those of you who joined us for part 2 or part 1. This is part 2 of our overview of behavioral health services. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're hoping to give you a good, high-level presentation over all the services that are available, and then we're going to go into a deep dive later in the year. So let's see. So quickly again, we're going to go through kind of an overview of how behavioral health services work. So we have different waiver authorities that allow us to bill Medicaid in a way that's different than what we would consider straight Medicaid, or what you might call the medical Medicaid versus our specialty behavioral health services. So we have those on the left that are available to everybody that's eligible, which are state plan services through Medicaid, EPSDT, early periodic screening and diagnostic testing, I believe. Long thing. That is available to 0 to 21 only, but still a state plan. And then we have what we call our I-SPA, so that's a 1915I. And that authority is, the SPA stands for State Plan Amendment. So it's basically allowing us to cover services that aren't typically covered in the state plan. Sometimes we can cover a similar service to the state plan, but it needs to have some kind of variation to whatever that state plan service already covers that makes it, a specialty service. So all of those are eligible to everybody who's eligible, available to all of those who are eligible. And then those on the right are what we call our C waivers, our 1915 C waivers. So we have HSW, which is the Habilitation Support Waiver, which is birth to death for people with disabilities. Our Children's Waiver Program, which is for children up to age 18. Again, with some of the more moderate to severe disabilities, and then what the SED waiver, which is the serious emotional disturbance waiver, and that is for children with some behavioral issues. And again, that's typically to 18, but it is possible to maybe stay on a little bit longer if needed. So these different colored boxes are going to be at the top of your slide, so you can understand what authority you can get those services under, which is important for those of you who are case managers or support coordinators, because it'll help you understand what's available to people based on whatever waiver or plan that they are eligible to receive services under. So, very important to make sure that as we go through this, you understand that everybody that receives services is doing so through, our person-centered planning process, that through the HCBS final rule, that in order to receive Medicaid funding, you must ensure that that individual receives services in the community to the same degree of access as individuals that are not receiving Medicaid. So this goes as far as the federal government saying If you're not following these rules, then you can't use Medicaid dollars to fund them. So it's really important to think about that when people are receiving services, that they're receiving them in a way that's similar to anybody else in the community. So we're not segregating people, we're not making special services designed to keep people away from the community. We're really trying to kind of merge these services into the community to support people to be part of their community, not separate from their community, or not to be treated as a separate section of population, right? So when we look at any kind of services, we want to go through our assessment process. We're looking for flags as people tell stories about, what their lives are like, what kind of struggles they face, things that kind of alert you to certain needs that a person might have, and maybe some ideas of what services might help that individual. And typically in those assessments, there's some kind of summary of the recommendations that a case manager, support coordinator, or even some of those more professional services would recommend for that person to be able to meet their life goals and to genuinely be a part of that community we're talking about. So those recommendations remain recommendations until that person goes through the person-centered planning process and meets all of the pieces and parts of medical necessity so that those services can be funded. And a big part of that is what we call the golden thread. So when we talk about medical necessity, we go through the eligibility and assessment process to make sure that that person is eligible to receive those services. We make those service recommendations based on the person's needs. We go through the person-centered planning process, and this is really based on information that's provided by the person and people who know the person. And we're really kind of, again, keeping that person driving and at the center of everything, that all the decisions that are made, and they really get to drive ultimately the decision about what services ultimately will end up in that plan. So person-centered planning is really based on that process, which again, you're going to need to keep that person kind of in the driver's seat. They're guiding and directing people who are helping support them. And we are authorizing those services based on what's going to help that individual, not just to keep, providers in business, or authorizing for the sake of having services. We're authorizing those services so that the person can be supported to meet the goals of the plan. And then, of course, through that process, we're coming up with that amount, scope, and duration of the service that the person is being provided. And this helps kind of keep all those what we call treatment goals all in line for what the service providers are going to be responsible for, so that monitoring and coordination and things like that can happen in a way that makes sure that whatever that person has deemed most important to them is honored, and those service providers are providing a foundation so that person can meet their goals. Oh, I had more. I apologize. And then your amount, scope, and duration must be sufficient to reasonably achieve the purpose. So you just want to make sure that when you're writing the amount, scope, and duration for that person's services, right? Um, for example, this is just the first thing that comes to my head, so it might not be a great example, but maybe a parent really was hoping that a child could gain some strength and walk better, for example. Um, if maybe that requires some physical therapy, saying that that person is going to have physical therapy one time for 15 minutes, probably not going to be sufficient to achieve the goal, right? So that's how we make sure that that's all on the up and up. So again, person-centered planning is about way more than services. We're really talking about helping people have full participation in life, that we're really looking at the person's community around them. We're building relationships and making sure that people have people in their lives to keep them safe and accountable to their community. Um, and that, really we look towards all the resources that would be available to support this person, not just community mental health resources. So that person-centered planning process is really helping a person to define whatever their bigger life goals are, what's most important to them, and what's the most important for them, so that they can, kind of go in whatever direction it is that they hope to go in. And that really should be driven by them, and the services are just there to support that person to get there. So, if you were here last time, we had this beautiful slide with all these fun colors. And I just highlighted the ones we're going over today in blue, so that you kind of have an idea of what was covered last time for the most part. But here we go. So, and these are in alphabetical order, even though they don't seem like it. The first one is family support and training. This service is really targeted to the family, as it says in the title. The training is for them to be able to understand, their family members' needs, um, and what they might take for them to provide, that non-provider support that families do all the time, right? That unpaid caregiver support. Typically, family support and training is provided by a licensed psychologist or a master level social worker. Um, and the training it needs to be directly related to the family's role in supporting the person, for, again, meeting their goals of their plan. So, what this service covers is the education and training, including instructions about treatment regimens, the use of assisted technology or medical equipment needed to safely maintain the person at home. So, if you've got someone who maybe just got some new either tech or equipment, and they need training, the family member needs training on how to use that safely with the person, that would be a great use for this. They can also receive like counseling or peer support for successfully caring for living with a person with disabilities. So that might even be helping somebody understand, maybe there's a behavior treatment plan, and understanding the family's role in being consistent about how to, approach certain behaviors so that we can target certain behaviors to either decrease or increase those behaviors, and also some family psychoeducation. So, goods and services. This is only available through the HAB waiver, and only available for people who self-direct their services. So the whole point of goods and services is really to be kind of a catch-all for having real budget authority. The person must have their own financial management service provider, formerly known as a fiscal intermediary, to be able to manage that budget. And it really allows people to more easily bill for things that typically would not be covered through Medicaid, but could be covered in the budget through that person-centered planning process. A person might identify something that would help them meet the goals of their plan that maybe doesn't neatly fit into a certain service description. And so really, we just updated the language for goods and services. It used to basically say that you must eliminate the need for a human being in order to use goods and services, something to that extent. It was very, is it was very confusing wording. But this ideally it would decrease the need for a Medicaid service, but it could also, as long as it provides assistance to increase independence, productivity, and community inclusion. The language is really and or across the board. So it's really flexible in the way that you can use it. There, a lot of people ask for a list of all the things you can do with goods and services, but the intent is not to really limit anything that you can do with goods and services so that people can be creative with its use. But we did make a not allowed list. So just some of the things like room and board, internet, cell phones, utilities, vacation costs, purchases, the PHP deems a monetary gain for the beneficiary's supports, or anything that would support, and we don't want to support this, but any significant influence over the beneficiary or would be a massive conflict of interest, those things would not be allowed. But we want people to be creative and be able to use goods and services to help people meet their goals of their plan. And sometimes that might mean some creative funding. So that's mainly what that service is about. Ooh, that's pretty. Um, and then we have medication reviews. I would assume most of you are pretty familiar with med reviews. That is a state plan service, so it is available across the board. But basically, we're making sure that we're monitoring and evaluating medical treatment with medicine to, help with that individual's behavioral health condition, making sure that they continue to have a need for the medicine. Um, Believe it or not, most behavioral health medicine, the hope is that people can start on a medication, use it for a while to kind of improve their functioning, and then hopefully wean off that medication someday. So really having that review to make sure that the medicine really is still necessary is really important to make sure that people aren't medicated without, necessity. So if you are a case manager or support coordinator, it's great practice to attend with the person when possible. It really helps give that support and make sure that everybody's on the same page about what the person is supposed to do. And it helps with communication and effective care to make sure that everybody's kind of on the same page. And at times, maybe there's information that that case manager or support coordinator has that will affect the psychiatrist's decision about whatever the medication that that person's on and whether or not to continue. Non-family training is kind of the opposite of family training. So basically, we're training the paid supports. Typically, this is training for aid level staff of whatever nature, respite, CLS, maybe job coaches, or I don't know if they still have behavior aids, but um, those would be all the kinds of services where you'd have uh, a professional level person be able to come in and do training for those service providers to really, again, understand the person's plan, what the overall, intention is, and how to focus the service delivery really in the best way to assist the beneficiary to meet their goals. And this can be really customized training. So, um, there are other professionals out there that are probably also working on treatment plans and helping along with the IPOS. But this is really kind of a more intentional training to assist the workers to be able to really get to the next level with whatever it is that the person is working on. And then I threw OBRA in here, which I believe in um, the Medicaid manual is called Nursing Home Mental Health Monitoring. which I actually learned that because OBRA is the name of the Omnibus Rehabilitation Act, I think it's called. Um, so this is the state plan, and really all OBRA is really trying to make sure that a person who's receiving behavioral health services time in a nursing home is appropriate and necessary, and hopefully as time limited as possible. So we really want to make sure that people are only in the nursing facility when they really, really need to, and that they could get back to the least restrictive setting as soon as possible. They must use our person-centered planning process, and OBRA, the OBRA team would assist sometimes with, if need necessary, with helping to get that person back home as soon as possible. Then we have out-of-home non-voc or non-vocational service. This is not new, but it's been updated. So there's some similar services, out-of-home non-voc, skill building, maybe some CLS, that are kind of all a little bit alike, but they're all a little bit different. One of the big things about out-of-home non-voc is that it's a HAB waiver only service. So only people on the habilitation waiver would be eligible for out-of-home non-voc. You're really trying again to identify some skill and help this person gain, retain, or improve in that skill. It's always regularly scheduled. It is outside the home, just like the title says, and not vocational. I don't know how to get much clearer than that. And typically a daytime activity. It can be either one-on-one or in a group. And it's great to coordinate with other therapies. So if there's things happening with, I don't know, physical therapy, for example, and there's a skill that, that person's working on. Um, I remember like a person working on climbing the stairs without needing staff to help them like hold their gait belt to make sure that they don't fall. Um, that would be a great thing to do I guess out in the community, and to get that person to the point where they're independently able to walk up and down the stairs. That might not be able to be done in the one time a week session with a physical therapist, for example. Um, the service does include transportation, and hopefully people will find some good use out of using the new out-of-home non-voc redefinition. Um, outpatient therapy and home-based therapy is both state plan services. Um, these are, your typical therapy that you think of. They're designed to help people with their relationships and functioning. Home-based in particular is for children, and as it says, provided in the home or in another community setting. Outpatient is usually somewhere in the community through an agency or maybe a private therapist. And individualized to the person or the family, includes things like behavioral health therapy, crisis intervention, service coordination, or other supports. Uh, and then we have overnight health and safety support. Hopefully, a lot of you are familiar with this service by now. Um, Basically, overnight health and safety is for those hours where a person is sleeping. CLS, which is one of the major services that happens during the day when people are awake, is about assisting, training, and teaching people. And it's hard to assist, train, and teach when someone is sleeping. So that overnight supervision is really for the time that the individual is asleep, but really needs more support to make sure that they are able to stay living independently in their home, that they will stay safe and healthy in that overnight time. This person, the provider must be awake and present ready to respond to any kind of unscheduled needs when they occur over in the overnight hours. Um, and typically, the person you have like a 12-hour period where you can do this overnight health and safety support service. So, uh, if someone is sleeping regularly through the night, but maybe they tend to have certain needs on a somewhat regular basis, this is a good service. Or if there's not a way to assist the person through technology or other means that I don't know, getting them out of the house in an emergency, for example, um, that wouldn't suffice. You would use this service. So again, it's really just making sure that in those sleeping hours, there's still somebody there to make sure that the person is going to be okay. Oh, I probably just said all this. So again, this language was also updated recently. So this provides safeguard against injury, hazard, or accident, including monitoring for non-life-threatening self-harm behaviors that require redirection. That is a newer part of overnight health and safety. It needs to be the least intrusive and most cost effective. So that's what I was saying. If there's tech or some other means, like, I don't know, figuring out a way to maybe a person isn't sleeping through the night for whatever reason, and if we can figure out a way to alleviate that and make sure that they are going to be able to sleep through the night. Or sometimes people are worried about somebody um, eloping in the middle of the night. So, are there ways that we can work on a behavior plan, for example, that would extinguish that behavior so that overnight health and safety isn't needed? Those are the kinds of things that we hope that people are trying to look for all their preventative options before they go to the overnight health and safety. Um, and then, obviously the person needs to be unable to independently do whatever the needs are that they need overnight. Some things that might I guess be red flags for you if you're looking to see if this service is necessary. It could be cognitive impairment. Again, needs assistance in that emergency setting. They have inconsistent sleep patterns, or they have disruptive or risky, harmful behaviors. All things that might make overnight health and safety and support appropriate. Then we have peer supports. Again, this is a state plan service. Um, Peer supports offer help across the board. They are people that have lived experience with whatever diagnosis of the person they're supporting. Um, they can help with food, clothing, socialization, housing, support to begin or maintain their behavioral health treatment. They really are uh, kind of a boon to people that actually are able to use them because they have kind of been in their shoes, and so they provide some real support that they've been there and they know where the person's coming from. So um, a peer mentor is the name for someone who supports people with disabilities, and a parent support partner is someone who helps families who have had children on the SED waiver. But that one is obviously only covered through the EPSDT, not the regular state plan. Then we have personal emergency response system, or people call it PERS for short. This is available both through the HEB waiver and the iSpa. Um, there's a wide range of for people that need this. This is really a technology-based solution. So, for example, the overnight health and safety supports that we were talking about, if a PERS could make sure that somebody was going to be safe overnight, like something happens, they're able to kind of hit the button and make a phone call to call for emergency help, and that's enough for them, then that would be a good option instead of that overnight health and safety support. But basically, this is a service that helps a person be able to stay in their own home, in their community setting. I'm sure all of you that have lived through the 90s saw all of the commercials about the nice lady who fell and couldn't get up. That's kind of what we're talking about. So, in these instances, people living alone or who are alone for significant parts of the day and want to have that independence and freedom of being so, are able to use this PERS so that everybody can feel good about them being alone in those situations, that they're not going to get stranded or, heaven forbid, get in an emergency and aren't able to be kept safe in that situation. And then we have respite. Respite is available across the board outside of the state plan. Respite is care that provides short-term relief for primary caregivers, giving them time to rest, travel, or spend time with other family and friends. The care may last anywhere from a few hours to several weeks at a time. Um, there's a lot of misinformation going on around respite um, for whatever reason. So respite can be in the person's home. The parents can be home while respite is happening. I think that myth may have started because maybe there were some busybody parents who were trying to, I don't know, help with the respite, which then negates, the point of respite, which is for them to get a break. Um, but if they are able to kind of, rest and relax and do their own thing, it is okay for them to be in the home. It can happen outside of the home as well. The beneficiary can sleep during respite. It is the worker who cannot sleep. The beneficiary can sleep. The respite can be routine. It's best if we're not using it as, regular daycare that a parent would be responsible for a minor. But if somebody needs, every Saturday, um, that can be okay. Um, it can be documented only with timesheets. If needed, a canned phrase about being able to provide the break for care can be used because really it's just about that supervision. Unfortunately, if you start documenting a lot for respite, then respite starts sounding like something else a lot of times. So um, it's best to keep it simple. And lastly, respite can be used if there is foster care respite or home help respite. Those are not uh, duplicating services. Not only are they from different funding streams, home help respite, for example, that's actually respite to the home help worker, not to the caregiver. So it's for a completely different person, typically. So, and home help respite is temporary. I believe the grant is um, coming to an end, so that won't be an issue anyway. Um, there's respite from agencies. You can have friends and family doing respite, usually through a self-directed service arrangement. You can do respite through camp. You can do respite in the 15-minute units or per diem. So whatever works best for that person or family to meet whatever the needs are for the caregiver to get their break. That should be all explored and figure out kind of what that service looks like for that individual, and make sure to document that in the plan of how it's expected to happen um, and the medical necessity, and you should be good to go. Private duty nursing. Private duty nursing is um, a service for the HAB waiver. This is for adults over the age of 21. Under 21 is private duty nursing comes from the state plan, but through behavioral health, we're talking about the adults. So obviously, there's a skilled nursing service. There's a max of 16 hours a day to meet whatever their health needs are, directly related to their developmental disability. The person needs to be dependent on technological medical equipment to sustain their life or have frequent episodes of medical instability in the past 3 to 6 months, or continue to require continuous skilled nursing care daily. This has its own level of care assessment for medical criteria. So, if there is somebody who might be eligible for private duty nursing, the Medicaid manual has great information to how to figure out what they will be eligible for and how to go about getting that service. Skill building. Um, This includes support services and training to help an individual participate actively at school, work, volunteer, community settings, or to learn social skills they may need to support themselves or to get around in the community. So it covers a lot of stuff. You can choose a skill that you want to develop that's for school, volunteering, just general community or work settings, or it can be a specific skill for individual competitive and integrated employment. The main things about skill building is that it is supposed to be time limited. It doesn't mean that it can't go on um, for some period of time, but the idea is that the person is actually gaining uh, skills and making progress so that they no longer need the service at some point. This service includes transportation, and it should only be happening in integrated settings, just like all HCBS services at this point. Supported employment available through the HEB waiver and the iSpa. Supported employment got like really big and inclusive and has a whole bunch of pieces and parts and levels, and is very cool, I think, in my opinion. But supported employment provides initial and ongoing support services and training, usually provided at a job site to help adults who are eligible for behavioral health services find and keep paid employment in the community, right? So we're trying to make sure that people are getting access to jobs just like everybody else, which is really the key of that individual competitive integrated employment. So we're not talking about in this case like somebody, I don't know, got a contract with somebody and we're going to be nice and let these people work here. We're talking about, people going out and being able to compete for jobs like just like everybody else. So we have individual placement, discovery, job development, um, self-employment, and benefits planning are all part of helping that person be able to get that individual competitive integrative employment. Um, and then your standard job coaching, which is really one-on-one with the individual to really help support them go through all the process of getting ready for and applying for jobs and all the fun stuff that you have to go through to be able to obtain a job. There's group employment, and transportation is also included in this service as well. And then we have vehicle modification. This is covered in the HEB waiver, the children's waiver, and the iSpa. Um, Mainly, we have this is for the person or family's primary vehicle to help with the individual's full integration into the community, and obviously to help with their health and safety and welfare. Um, I can't even imagine just being if you need a wheelchair and you're saying like go wheel out to the corner store or whatever in negative 30-degree weather or unplowed sidewalks or anything like that. You can easily see how this would be a safety issue. The PHP must document adaptation, that the adaptation is more cost effective than buying a new vehicle. The vehicle mod covers just the adaptations and alterations to the vehicle, right? So it's not covering the vehicle itself. Unfortunately, it doesn't cover purchasing that vehicle, but it covers um, being able to put in a lift or whatever needs to be modified for that person to be able to use it. Um, Generally, you want to, when you go to a vendor who does these modifications, you want to make sure that the cost of everything is itemized. So some people will buy the van or whatever vehicle it is, and then have the whatever modification. So as long as that invoice is itemized out so that you can define what is the actual modification and what is the cost of the vehicle or any other non-Medicaid covered pieces. That should be enough to help be able to figure out how to get things covered. This does need a script from the doctor, so that's kind of one of the first part pieces of getting this done. And this is something that can't be self-directed, just mainly because it's not typically a service that would be um, something that you would you probably go out and find the company who's going to do this anyway. So people already have kind of choice and control over where they're going to get this modification done. So it's just all those pieces of getting everything situated so that it can be covered by Medicaid is the fun part of this service. And then I just wanted to briefly cover that there's a lot of other services that I would say supplement behavioral health services a lot of times. So home help is a big part of a lot of people that work in behavioral health lives, because if you have someone who needs community living supports, um, and they have personal care needs as well, we always want to make sure that we offset the cost of um, the behavioral health services, really to make sure that we're being responsible with those Medicaid dollars. So we want to always go to any kind of state plan service that we can to cover any of those needs. So we would reach out to home help to do an assessment to see how much of the person's needs can be covered by them. And then the person would have both home help and CLS, for example, um, for however many hours of coverage that would be needed. And again, going through that person-centered planning process to figure all that out. We have non-emergency medical transportation, so if somebody needs help to get to their medical appointments, that is also a state plan services that's available to people who have Medicaid and are able to use that on a regular basis. If you have somebody who unfortunately has been hospitalized and has some kind of temporary needs as they come home from the hospital, home health is also an option. So they would come in and basically help support the person until they recovered from whatever whatever reason they were in the hospital, and just make sure that they're well before home health kind of departs and leaves them back to their typical services. The family support subsidy is um, just a subsidy that goes to parents for if they are eligible. The eligibility is actually through the school. So if they have a child um, that was adopted, then they can get a family support subsidy if they have a disability. There's also a service called a physiatrist. And now I'm going to forget what their other name is. I think it's something about mobility. But a physiatrist is a doctor who works with people with mobility issues. So if you have somebody who maybe has spasticity, or temperature regulation problems, things like that. A physiatrist really specializes in how to help people with those issues. A lot of times they're the people who are responsible for monitoring and prescribing Botox treatments to people with spasticity, for example. So that might be another doctor that you would coordinate with if you have people that you support who have that need. Durable medical equipment is, how you're going to get all of your wheelchairs and all of that good stuff. So being able to understand the ins and outs of how that works, and how often you can get some of that medical equipment and who you would go to for vendors of such equipment, is another pretty, I don't want to say popular, but pretty um, regular occurrence, I guess, in our work, depending on who you serve. And then lastly, there are benefits planners. I think that this is also a piece of our supported employment now, but if you have general questions about Social Security, et cetera, there's so many things that are tied up between Medicaid, Social Security, and the other benefits that people receive through um, the government, I guess, for being able to help, people just be able to live and keep a roof over their head. Um, that sometimes it helps to be able to have somebody to support that person to make decisions that are best for being able to keep those benefits without having to sacrifice something else in their life, especially when you're, in that position of trying to uh, get a job and grow your income, then it becomes more questionable about, well, how much money can I make and what can I do before I might be losing, sometimes it's, the person's actual apartment or living arrangement is predicated on them being eligible for a certain benefit. So it's very important that people understand, what's going on with their benefits and what choices they can make. Uh, what questions do you have for me?
Okay, we do have a decent amount of questions, Laura. And we're going to start, we're going to go back to outpatient therapy. The first question is outpatient therapy a service provided for an IDD adult?
Yes, absolutely. And I think something that's nice about behavioral health is that, this again would be covered through state plan, so it is available to anybody with Medicaid, but the behavioral health system is usually going to contract with people that kind of understand our population. And so absolutely you can get outpatient therapy for people with IDD.
Thank you. And there are a few related to respite. So the first one is specific to the My Choice waiver, and it is asking if it is correct that respite through the My Choice waiver is only available as an in-home service.
I do not know that. I apologize.
So we will take note of the person who asked that question and we will get you an answer over email. The next one is asking if there is a limit to, I'm assuming, amount of time for camp and weekend respite camp.
I guess I would say that it would be limited to whatever's authorized in the plan of service.
Yeah, I would definitely say to work that through in your planning process. So I think the answer to that is there's not any written limit within the Medicaid language that says there is a cap on those services. Um, so then this is for out of home non-voc, is asking how can someone request out of home non-voc, and is there a link to learn more about this service?
Oh, um, is there a link to learn more about it? I
Well, I
don't
was
know if
thinking that we
it's,
could offer, at the last waiver conference, we did a presentation on choosing the correct service for your daytime activities, and we could provide that link. I think that was really helpful for folks.
we can do that. I also wonder, we have a new waiver webpage and I was wondering, it might be on there. I don't know.
Okay.
Um, but yes, I think that is probably a good resource for the presentation from the waiver conference.
Yeah, we can include
And
that in the follow-up email to attendees today, the PDF of that. That was a great presentation. Um, so the next one talks about skill building, and is there a maximum time allowed for skill building towards the same goal?
no, it should be individualized. And so, yes, it's meant to be time limited. But obviously, we work with people who may need to work on a skill much, much longer than other people. So it depends on that person's needs. And you would have to rely on that person-centered planning process to, identify. Obviously, you can set a, by X date, we hope to achieve this, but if the person still needs to extend that would be okay.
Thank you. This next one relates to supported employment. And the question generally is asking if there are limitations to who could receive supported employment, such as IQ levels.
No,
Thank you. A couple related to the vehicle mod, and one is just a comment, which I think is really helpful. The vehicle modifications set to check the year of the vehicle, that most vendors for modifications will not address certain issues if the vehicle is too old. So that is correct, and thank you.
that is a great tip. Yes.
Yeah. Another one is does the vehicle modification include having a trailer to transport adaptive equipment needed to be included in recreation and leisure?
That doesn't sound like a modification to me.
Agreed. Um, this one is a comment about the family support subsidy that is asking, it says, I thought family support subsidy was for children who have significant needs documented in their IEP.
Yes, thank you. I was stumbling because
Yes.
I apologize. There's too much going on in my brain.
And then there's a general question about are services related to deaf and blindness, low vision available for HAB or other waivers?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That's a good
I,
question.
again, you guys are gonna I sound like a broken record, but I would say through the person-centered planning process, absolutely. Um, as part of, case management, support coordination through behavioral health, we should always be linking and coordinating to resources around the state. So any kind of deaf, blind, hard of hearing, the services that are already available through the blind. I'm not going to remember. I'm going to call it the Blind Commission, and that's not right. So if anybody else wants to pipe in what that is, um, but you can absolutely, help make referrals and connect people to those resources so that they can, get as much support as possible in that manner.
And we did have some input. Somebody said that it is the Bureau of Services for Blind
The
Persons.
blind. Thank you. I was like, that's not right.
Thank you. A couple of people are asking for additional information on the benefits planner and where that could be found.
I will look it up. I will email you.
So we will put that in the follow-up email to attendees as well. And then this is a general, are there resources for supported self-employment?
Yes. That actually is part of supported employment. I don't, not sure. There was maybe that should have had another slide, but yeah, there is a part of supported employment that is specific to self-employment. So I believe that's is or is going to be in the Medicaid manual if it's not already. But yeah, if you work with whoever your supported employment people are at in your local area, they should be familiar with how all of that works and be able to give support in that area.
Thank you. Excuse me. This is a more specific question, maybe one that we want to talk about outside of this, but something is about asking if the HAB is able to, or how it could assist someone on dialysis as far as support during treatment.
Yeah. That's a tough question because typically, if you're billing Medicaid, I assume the dialysis is through Medicaid. I don't know. But typically, if you're billing a Medicaid service, it's hard to bill another Medicaid service at the same time. So that one might be tricky.
Yep. But if you want further like discussion around specific cases, I would encourage you to reach out to Laura or myself or both of us, and we'd be happy to, talk outside of the webinar with you guys. That is the end of the questions that I am seeing. Heather, do you see any others that I have missed?
Nope, I think we've answered all the questions in the Q&A.
Okay, great. So the final ask, we have 3 minutes left. We would like to ask of the audience, the next four webinars in this series will take a deeper dive into many of these services, not all of them, but many of them. And we would like to hear from you. What services are you most interested in having us take a deeper dive into? If you could put that into is it the Q&A, Heather, that they can
Yes,
put
Q&A.
into? And we will gather that information and make sure that we cover the most requested in the next 4 webinars.
And while you guys are doing that, just a quick reminder that this webinar series will be the third Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. And, we're going to tailor the next couple based on our answers here. We do have recordings of all of our past webinars on the website, and that link will be in the follow-up email, and we will get the PDF to you once that is available. And I think that's all the follow-up information that I have.
Okay, well, I see lots of suggestions coming in through the Q&A. So if you can't think of one right now and you want to email Heather, or Heather probably would be best. And then she can collect that for us
And
with
my
what you'd like
email's
to
not
see.
posted, but it's just
Oh.
Heather at mi.org. So just like Marie's, but my name instead. So Heather at arcmi.org. If you want to go ahead and send those to me, and we will definitely look at the ones that have been submitted to the Q&A.
Well, we want to thank Laura for a good presentation once again, for sharing all of this knowledge with everyone, and we hope to see everyone again next month.
Wonderful. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Have a great day.
Thank you.